Good evening. My name is Sue Smerrick, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area. I welcome you to tonight's forum featuring candidates for the Ann Arbor City Council in Wards 2 and 3. The candidates will be on the ballot on the primary election Tuesday, August 7th. We are broadcasting this evening from the CTN studios in Ann Arbor. The League of Women Voters is pleased to be sponsoring these forums. The League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that does not support candidates or parties, but we do take stands on issues that we have studied. One of the League's important goals is to assist voters in making informed choices at the polls, and thus we're bringing you tonight's program. Volunteers from the League of Women Voters are facilitating tonight's forum. Our moderator this evening is Jeff Smerrick, who will explain the process from here.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, viewers, for joining us. It's my honor to introduce the two candidates for the Ann Arbor City Council from Ward 2, Kathy Griswold and Kirk Westfall. And now it's my honor to introduce the two candidates for the Ann Arbor City Council from Ward 3, Julie Grand and Alice Lieberson. Thank you, candidates. The forum today will have this format. Each candidate will have an opening statement of up to 90 seconds, a minute and a half. Each candidate will have a closing statement of up to 1 minute. In between, the moderator will ask the questions which came from the Ann Arbor community. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to a question. At appropriate times, the timers will hold up their paddles with the amount of time remaining, and then finally a stop sign. Candidates, please stop when indicated so that all will have an equal opportunity to participate. The order of speaking today was determined by a drawing before we began. Opening first from Ward 2 will be Kathy Griswold, who will also close second. Candidate Kirk Westfall from Ward 2 will open second and close first. Among the candidates from Ward 3, Julie Grand will open third and close fourth, and Alice Lieberson will open fourth and close third. Our timers are League members Sally Allen and Paige Silence. And now, Kirk Westfall, may we have your opening statement? Oh, excuse me, was it, I'm completely confused. Was Kathy Griswold, may we have your opening statement?
Hi, I'm Kathy Griswold, and I'm running for council in the Democratic primary election to represent Ann Arbor's 2nd Ward. I want to begin by saying that Ann Arbor is a fabulous place to call home, and I am running because I want to preserve and protect what we love about our city, and to focus on improving our roads, our crosswalks, and our basic services. Our budget must reflect our priorities. I'd like to read a quote from Councilmember Jane Lum, because in going door to door, people say, "Are you running against Jane? Where is Jane?" So I'd like to say that I would be joining Jane Lum on council. She has 2 more years in her term. She writes, "Kathy has been an engaged, positive contributor in our community for years. She genuinely cares about Ann Arbor and understands that quality of life begins with neighborhoods and is largely a function of taking care of the basics first. Kathy's smart, she listens, and she'll work hard to understand the specific neighborhood issues and get them addressed. I'm absolutely convinced she'll be a very effective representative for the 2nd Ward."
Thank you, Ms. Griswold. Now, Mr. Westfall, may we have your opening statement?
Hi, I'm Kirk Westfall, and I'm the incumbent candidate in the Democratic Ward 2 primary on August 7th. I'm running for re-election because I simply love serving the public and I love the city. My dedicating so much of my past 12 years to public service in Ann Arbor has truly been one of the most rewarding things I've done. Between 8 years on the Planning Commission, 5 years on the Environmental Commission, 4 years on the Commission on Disability Issues, and 2 terms on City Council, I feel I've been able to contribute my time in urban planning training in a highly effective and collaborative manner. For example, I played a leading role in a wide range of policy changes, from design improvements to buildings, to election reforms that save money and increase turnout. I brought an AARP conference on age-friendly communities to Ann Arbor. I've been a leading voice for transit and for pedestrian safety. I authored a resolution recommending dedicating staff to the Vision Zero program, which has proven hugely successful in other communities. And we've made significant strides in crosswalk improvements. I wish to continue this important work and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. And Ms. Grand, we're ready for your opening statement.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Julie Grand, and for the last 4 years, it's been an honor to serve as your Ward 3 representative on the Ann Arbor City Council. Professionally, I've spent my career in public health and education. My husband David and I have lived in Ann Arbor for 20 years and are the proud parents of a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old who continue to thrive in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. In addition to constituent service, which is the core of what we do, I focus my energies during my time on council on committees related to parks and open space, maintaining quality housing for our most vulnerable residents, and improving communication between the city and our educational institutions. During these last 4 years, we've added millions of dollars to fix our roads and ensure the safety of our water, completed high-priority pedestrian safety improvements around our schools, and developed solutions to make Ann Arbor a more affordable place to live. I look forward to discussing the issues that have been identified by you, the voters, this evening, and hope that I have again earned your vote on August 7th.
Thank you, Ms. Grand. And now we're ready for your opening statement, Ms. Lieberson.
Hello, I'm Alice Lieberson, and I'm running to represent the people of the 3rd Ward to City Hall, not City Hall to you. Ann Arbor is a wonderful place to live, but rapid growth is bringing some problems to the surface, such as pressures on our infrastructure and our environment. The partisan makeup of current council does not allow for the discussion, debate, or compromise needed to successfully manage growth. This is my first political campaign, my first campaign of any type. I am a political newcomer. I am not part of any bloc or alliance. My only loyalties will be to thoughtful, independent thinking and to the people of the 3rd Ward, where I have lived for the past 17 years. I'm a retired veterinarian and the former owner of Dogma Catman 2, which was a pet shop in downtown Ann Arbor. Before that, I worked in market research and strategic planning for over 15 years, valuable experience for the work of council. I have the skill set, energy, and time to be an effective and independent council member. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all candidates. And now to the questions. Our first 2 questions, which will repeat, are ward specific. So the first question relating to Ward 2 goes to you. May I ask this question of Kathy? Kathy, Ward 2 has a large international population, including students attending the University of Michigan. How can you represent the specific students' concerns as well as the concerns of permanent residents? Do they clash? What do they have in common?
I am chair of the Friends of the Michigan League as well as on the Board of Governors of the Michigan League. So I work closely with the University of Michigan. And I talk to students. In fact, I have been hosting graduate students and currently have a PhD student and his wife and 2-year-old child living with me. So I feel I have a perspective that can well represent the students as well as, and especially the international students. But I think that my priority is really to the citizens of the 2nd Ward. And I want to make sure that the citizens that have been living in our community for 20, 30, 40 years, I've been there for 34 years, that those priorities are put first, and that when we talk about affordability, it's not just new buildings downtown. Affordability is also the cost of living in Ann Arbor for people who have lived in their homes for 20 or 30 years. And we have to be very careful and evaluate every new tax to determine, is this really giving us the benefits that are justified by the cost, and is this making Ann Arbor less affordable?
Thank you, ma'am. And now, Mr. Westfall, the same question to you.
That's an excellent question. I think collaboration with the university, whether it's with the leadership, regents, or staff, is an important relationship to have and to foster. It's been described, the city and U of M relationship has been described as a marriage without the option of divorce. I mean, we've grown up next to Michigan, and Michigan's grown up next to Ann Arbor. I have had a great relationship with students I've met at the university through the College Dems and other organizations, and a lot of their needs reflect the needs I hear from current residents. It may not be the same as the homeowners say in my neighborhood, but it's what they want for their children and grandchildren. For example, affordable housing. That is something that cuts across all demographics. Students are facing desperate pressures on rental rates. The U of M has increased enrollment by around 5,000 over the past 10 years, and that's put a very large squeeze on rental affordability and supply. Likewise, I hear from a lot of residents that they're shocked by the increase in their housing prices and the rental rates, and they want an opportunity for either their parents or grandparents or kids and grandchildren to be able to locate in Ann Arbor. So I think representing the students is the same as representing the current other typical residents we think of.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. Ms. Grand, the next question goes to you relating to Ward 3. Ward 3 covers affluent parts of Ann Arbor, such as Burns Park, as well as lower income areas. What should the City Council do to address socioeconomic inequities in our community as reflected in Ward 3?
That's a great question. One of the reasons that I was drawn to representing Ward 3 is because we have such a diverse population. I will hold our residents up against any ward in the city. I think it's a fascinating place with lots of strong neighborhoods. And one of the examples that I think in Ward 3, if we think about addressing inequities, is to look to the strengths of Ward 3. I'm trained in public health and trained to understand that we look, instead of trying to pit one group against another and looking at deficits, actually looking at what the strengths are. And one of the strengths of Ward 3 is that we have these fantastic co-ops throughout the ward. So there really is an example of how we can do effective, affordable housing in our city through public-private partnerships. So the co-ops are just a terrific example of people living in a thriving community. Other ways that we need to address social inequities are through housing. So and housing can't just be done through private enterprise alone. We really do have a role to play in addressing the inequities. For me, the equity analysis that came out from the county that showed that and in line with evidence that shows we're the 8th most inequitable, socioeconomically inequitable county in the country, shows that there's a lot of work to do, and it means coming up with solutions to address our housing.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Same question to you, Ms. Lieberson.
This has been a very interesting time for me because, as you say, the Ward 3 is a very diverse area. And I must say, I wasn't as aware of that as I am now. So I have visited all the precincts of Ward 3. And I don't know when council makes decisions if they do take this inequity or these lower income people into account. For example, the recent water study deliberately attempts to transfer a greater burden of our water bill to residential homeowners, based on the false assumption, I think, that residential homeowners can afford this, that they have ample incomes. This is simply not true. When I've talked to people in the southeastern parts of our ward, it is clearly not true, and they're concerned. So we need to be mindful of this and remember that these changes are not just because people who are fortunate to live in Burns Park and have adequate income can pay for their water increase. Not everybody can. Also, I just wanted to note that most of the cooperatives in the Third Ward are now market rate housing. They are no longer cooperatives. So, thank you.
Ms. Lieberson. And we stay with you for the next question, Ms. Lieberson, which is, do you think increasing the amount of affordable housing in Ann Arbor is a priority? If so, what actions should the City Council take to make that happen?
I do think that increasing affordable housing in Ann Arbor is a very important priority. And Council has been talking about it for years and years, and I'd be interested to know the progress that has been made. We have ambitious goals to establish many units of affordable housing, and we are woefully behind on that goal. A recent project announced by the Housing Commission is going to demolish 41 units of housing on Henry Street, replace it with 42 units, even though zoning considerations allowed them to increase density. So this is a multi-million-dollar project that is not getting us anywhere closer to our goals. So instead of simply having a goal, what we need is a plan, and we need to look at what other cities are doing. So for example, the Detroit City Council recently enacted an affordable housing plan that sets financial targets, identifies funding sources, has specific allocations for maintenance so we don't have to keep destroying units and just treading water, as well as new construction. I think we also need to look at new funding sources, such as using parking revenues from the DDA, the millage allocation for affordable housing, and also talk to private philanthropies and the University of Michigan to see if they might be interested in some innovative funding.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberson. Same question to you, Ms. Grand, which is, do you think increasing the amount of affordable housing in Ann Arbor is a priority? And if so, how should the City Council make that happen?
Great. It's an excellent and incredibly important question. I'm fortunate to serve as liaison to the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, so I would like to just speak to that project for 1 second. That improvement on the White State and Henry project, which maxed out its government funding, it's an incredibly complex project, will actually be fully accessible and will have more supportive services for residents. So I do think it's quite an improvement. I'm very excited about having a consistent source of revenue through our public safety rebate that will bring $900,000 a year into our city coffers and into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Staff is now working on something I've been asking for years, which is a long-awaited plan for city-owned land. Do we sell it and put money into the trust fund and leverage it? Do we use that land for our own housing goals? Staff is also working on transit-oriented development zoning, which will allow housing on our transit corridors, which is more affordable and also can have someone perhaps not have to have a car, which allows more money for housing. Having public-private partnerships, I think the university is now finally understanding their role to play in the redevelopment of some of their housing on North Campus and looking to provide housing for their workers. So there are lots of policies. It's a complex issue, and it requires a multifaceted set of interventions.
Thank you, Ms. Grand. Now, Mr. Westfall, same question to you relating to affordable housing.
Thank you. Yes, it's certainly a priority for me, and as a council, we say it's a priority. Admittedly, our progress has been lacking. There's no sugarcoating that. As has been mentioned, we've got a consistent revenue stream coming this year from the millage rebate, which is good news. Hopefully, when the library lot sale gets executed, we'll have close to $5 million into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And as also been mentioned, what we have been told by the community we should do with our vacant parcels downtown is allow housing to be developed there, and I would commit to putting a significant portion of each of those land sales toward the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Also, yes, affordability also means bending the cost curve for market rate housing. There's been a lot of talk in the community about, well, what does the luxury downtown housing do for us? Any new downtown housing is going to be luxury when it's first built. It's a factor of the construction costs, it's a factor of the land prices, it's a factor of tight supply. And a lot of these issues are oversimplified for good talking points. But my remaining piece about affordability is transit. I've been a huge supporter of transit. Unlike my opponent, unfortunately, I think providing transit is a huge piece of keeping budgets affordable, and it's something that our residents in the city have committed to, and I plan to keep supporting transit.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. And Ms. Griswold, same question.
Yes, I have a master's degree in social work, and I took my first urban planning class in 1973 when we toured the subsidized housing in Toronto, Canada. It is an extremely complex issue. And one of the problems, if you look at affordable housing programs in other cities, Portland, San Francisco, is that the more well-intentioned the program, the more likely it is to lead to gentrification. And I am for affordability, but we can't just use that term. We have to look at it very carefully. We have to study what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past. There are federal funds available, and unfortunately that funding is not as available under this president. Regarding the Ann Arbor Area Transit Authority, I have not supported all tax increases of the Transit Authority. I am supporting the renewal that's on the ballot in August, but as someone with a master's in social work as well as a master's in business administration, I carefully examine every proposed tax increase to see if the return outweighs the cost to the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griswold. Mr. Westfall, the next question goes to you. In the prior election, an increase in Washtenaw County millage was approved by voters, as you earlier referred to. What is your response to the pushback from some Ann Arbor residents who feel that the money which Ann Arbor will receive from the millage increase should be spent on mental health issues and on affordable housing rather than on climate change and on pedestrian safety?
That's an excellent question. That millage was a multifaceted millage, and as many know, it provided for mental health, which we are all taxing ourselves for to be delivered by the county, and for public safety, and for those municipalities within the county who have their own police forces receive a rebate. So to be clear, the citizens of Ann Arbor are taxing themselves for increased mental health delivery through the county. The city does not deliver mental health services directly. I think council took a prudent approach whenever we have an unaccounted for new stream of revenue, such as from a land sale or from a millage rebate. We exercise the utmost in transparency to say how it will be spent, so the voters know whether to support the initiative or not. And I agree with the priorities that were set by council last year and voted on twice, I believe. And they cover priorities that the community has expressed to us over and over that have just been lacking in funding. So I think changing those priorities would do a disservice to transparency and my own ethics.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. Ms. Griswold, same question to you.
I opposed the mental health millage on the grounds that it was deceitful and the ballot language did not state what the funds were being used for. When it passed by the county commissioners, it was very controversial and it only passed by one vote. And what really troubles me is that we have an opioid crisis in this community. We have a mental health crisis in this community. We have way too many people who are being housed in the county jail who simply need mental health services that would be much cheaper to deliver. And Ann Arbor has those needs, and Ann Arbor needs to step up to that. a reputable survey company showed that the majority of voters, when they voted for the millage, did not know that the funding was going to be used for anything other than mental health and public safety. In addition, the funds that we are getting in Ann Arbor, and I don't even want to call them a rebate, the funds that we are getting in Ann Arbor are not going into our budget process to be decided on by the council at the time the funds come in, but they will be decided simply by the mayor. They will bypass the budget process. And the county commissioners delayed collecting those funds until this December. And I thought there was plenty of time to get it right with a new millage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griswold. Ms. Lieberson, same question to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a very important question for a lot of reasons, but the strong support for the millage shows how important our citizens feel this need is. And when the council majority made their decision to redirect these monies, they claimed that people knew. But as was mentioned, there was a survey done which showed only 25% of voters were very much or somewhat aware, while 75% of voters were vaguely or not at all aware that this was what was going to be happening to the money. We do not have great communications in this city because we don't have a daily newspaper, so it's very hard to relay this kind of information. After this became more well-known, these issues became more well-known following the passage of the millage, and these concerns were brought to the attention of council, the council majority dug their heels in and said, we made a promise. But I'm not sure who they made that promise to. I don't think they made it to the people. I think they made it to each other. If you'd like more information on the study and other ways we deliver mental health services through the city, and we do have a mechanism for doing that, even though it's not direct care, you can go to the website, Ann Arbor Citizens for Mental Health and Public Safety.com. You'll find a lot more details.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberson. And now, Ms. Grant, same question to you.
Thank you. So I, like Councilmember Westfall, supported this twice. First, because I thought it was our responsibility to inform voters about how the money was spent, and second, to uphold that promise to our voters. These priorities were not new priorities that we plan to spend the money on. These priorities were directly reflective of residents' interests. When residents time and time again with these priorities would say, this is my #1 priority, please find funding for this. And this was a way to come through. There were great ideas about how we could follow through on our climate action plan, but for years we were just piecemeal putting in money here or there. This provides us with a steady stream. And I have heard very consistently from many of my residents and constituents in the 3rd Ward that these climate action goals are essential to what they want. They actually don't want to see the money spent on services that we don't have a mechanism to provide. I think mental health is incredibly important. I supported this initiative. I work with students in crisis on a very regular basis. I understand the issues firsthand, but and we are giving $3 million to the county to provide those services. But we've had these fantastic ideas, and I look forward to their implementation in terms of housing, in terms of our climate action plan, and in terms of pedestrian safety.
Thank you, Ms. Grand. And as it happens, the next question goes to you again,
Great.
relating to the library lot. The library lot is currently subject to a citizens' initiative that would turn the property into a city park. If that citizens' initiative passes, the Affordable Housing Fund stands to lose about $5 million. How would you address the funding gap should that be passed?
Great. It's an excellent question. I feel like I'll be repeating myself a little bit based on what we talked about with plans for affordable housing. First and foremost, the $5 million is not something to just be pushed aside and seen as insignificant. That $5 million, if leveraged, could provide 200 to 500 units of permanent supportive housing. And one of the concerns that I've heard about the library lot is like, oh, well, it's just one-time funding. Well, tell that to the families that this housing could change their lives. Tell that to someone who's been chronically homeless, that the housing could change their lives. I've touched on some other priorities. The $900,000 coming in from the millage rebate will help fill some of those gaps, looking to some of our public-private partnerships and zoning changes, looking to a plan for affordable housing. I'm pleased that we now have control of the Y lot. I hope that we will have money from the sale of the library lot to pay back that bond, but if we don't, we'll figure it out and go to the community and look for solutions for how to fund a project that's reflective of our community goals. So we will continue forward with our plans whether or not the sale of the library lot exists and goes forward, but I certainly hope it does, because I think it has the ability to change lives.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. And Ms. Lieberson, same question to you relating to the library lot.
Great, thank you for letting me respond. The $5 million that has been mentioned is really only $3.5 million, because the city is going to give Core Spaces $1.5 million to provide 9 units at 150% of fair market rate. That is how the approach to affordable housing has been taken on that lot. So the other, if we look at the math a little, we just heard that this $5 million can provide 200 to 500 units of affordable assisted housing. I think there's something wrong with the math there, because the project I spoke about on Henry Street, there's also an additional project on Platt Road. Those two projects, and even though the details of the Platt Road project are vague, by my estimation wouldn't provide more than 120 units for $18 million. So I don't quite get the math there. So $4 million is not a drop in the bucket. It's actually the amount of parking revenue that the DDA contributes to the city on an ongoing basis. So that would be a replenishable source of that money.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberson. Ms. Griswold, same question to you relating to the library lot.
I believe that the citizens gathered signatures to put this issue on the ballot, and that it is the democratic thing to do to let the public decide. I also think that whenever the council majority wants to do something that could be slightly shady, slightly controversial, they bring in affordability. I know a lot of people that have been homeless, that live in subsidized housing, and I find it insulting that we continue to use poor people to get what we want in this community when frequently it has nothing to do with affordability. And why are we pitting now the citizens who want it on the ballot with poor people? That, I believe, is wrong. I also think that there is a recurring fund that we could use for affordable housing, and that is from the DDA parking revenue. Let's find a recurring fund and let's address the issue by itself, not leveraging it against another issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griswold. Same question to you, Mr. Westfall.
Thank you. This is a piece of land with a long history, so we don't have time to go into that here. I appreciate that there's varying views on how to use this piece of land. The question relates to what would happen if the sale did not go through. I think that would be unfortunate for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It would be unfortunate for the process that hundreds of citizens went through to determine what the best use of that land is. And I think it's been a debated issue, and I think it's time to move forward. We have business to conduct with the Y lot. We've been told that we should use other lots like the Palio lot and the Klein lot, and there's a long list of properties we need to get on the tax rolls. What we do with that money should be subject to vigorous debate, but I think it would be tragic to lose that significant sum from the sale of the library and sacrifice that opportunity for housing. And I'll just say, I mean, it sounds like we're coming up with some interesting ideas for, reallocating the DDA's money, but I'm not hearing what we're going to cut to in exchange for that. So, like anything, plans sound good, but you need the money to back it up.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. Ms. Griswold, next question goes to you. What is your position on an Ann Arbor City income tax? Explain what this would entail, as well as the advantages and disadvantages.
Well, I can give you a real short answer on that. I don't think it makes sense to do the analysis at this time because I don't think the citizens of this community trust their government. And so any proposal for an income tax would not be taken seriously, nor could we sell that idea at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griswold. Mr. Westfall, to you, the same question on a proposed Ann Arbor City income tax.
We have had to lay all options on the table when it comes to revenue. This revenue is one of our existential threats to Ann Arbor. And I know the idea was floated 20-some years ago, and it failed. It was floated 10 or so years ago, and it never made it to the table. And I asked staff a year and a half ago to have a relook at the prospect of an income tax and what the numbers might look like. Because frankly, the way that Michigan restricts its cities from earning revenue, the future is mixed. So there's lots to like about an income tax. I think it provides a mechanism to have commuters, since we're a company town and that company is U of M, chip in for the costs that they use in our infrastructure. It relieves us of the burden of having so much of our land off the tax rolls. And it also has a progressive effect on, for example, empty nesters or retirees with lower income. The difficulty that has come up in conversations about the income tax is that it would also relieve large corporate landowners from the operating millage, since the operating millage has to go away. And the supposition is that being a free market, that would exert a downward pressure on rents. However, many in the community don't trust that those savings would be passed along to tenants.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. Same question to you, Ms. Grand, about the proposed Ann Arbor City income tax.
Thank you. We did recently have staff do a small analysis of this idea again and talk to us about the pros and cons. With 80,000 employees commuting into the city every day, there is a lot that's initially attractive about the possibility of a city income tax. They're using our roads, they're using our services, and it does seem equitable that they should pay their fair share of using our services. And there are certainly benefits for longtime homeowners who are no longer employed, for example, retirees. However, the trade-offs are pretty significant. First, that the income is less predictable. And with cycles, with economic cycles, it is better to have a more reliable source of income. We like to plan for the long term in the city, and it makes it difficult to do that with a city income tax. The other trade-off that's particularly troubling to me is that we only break even with the city income tax in terms of revenue if we tax all workers in the city. So there's not a way to say only tax workers that are at a certain income threshold or above. And I do fear that it's regressive for people who already can't afford to live in our city to tax them further. That doesn't seem fair. So that to me is probably the biggest deterrent to asking for a city income tax.
Thank you, Ms. Grand. Ms. Lieberson, same question to you, please.
Okay, excuse me. I don't have a staff to work for me, but I do believe that it would require a vote of the people to enact an income tax, and I think that's a very big hurdle by itself. It would indeed help some, lower income residents of Ann Arbor, but I hear kind of both sides about what it would do to all the people who commute here and work here. When we talk about affordability, we acknowledge that many people who work here can't afford to live here. So having them have to contribute is regressive and not equitable. So I'm not, it's either equitable or regressive, but it can't be both. So I think that it would be a difficult thing to pass, and I think we can leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberson. Mr. Westfall, let's ask you this question. Now, we've been asking many questions so far this evening. In addition to the questions we've already asked, what other issue is a priority for you, and how would you address it?
Oh goodness, well, we've got a full plate, but I guess one thing that I hear a lot on doors has to do with both traffic and pedestrian safety. I guess they go hand in hand for sure, and has been noted, we've got tens of thousands of cars coming into the city on every given day, and that presents a challenge. It's a mixed blessing and curse. I guess we've got a healthy job market, but that means a lot more people coming in every day and causing congestion and causing road stress and some unsafe behaviors. So, Ward 2 has Nixon Road, which has been a challenge for both pedestrian safety and speed. That is being designed and hopefully funded in the coming year. But other access points like Plymouth Road and Washtenaw, I think there's lots of opportunities for more effective signalization, for more efficient flow. There's things that we can do, such as look at expanded use of roundabouts, which have been proven safer for pedestrians and motorists and also for efficiency. We need to start implementing what we came up with for the Washtenaw corridor and working with the state to get those improvements done. And some of the big picture things like commuter rail, I think would be a game changer to take a lot more cars off the road. So we need to look at improvements to Amtrak and other ways of getting people into the city.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. Ms. Griswold, same question to you. In addition to everything we've been asking so far, what other issue is a priority for you, and how would you address it?
What I hear in the second ward is that we need to improve our roads. We have an initiative to improve and spend more money on our roads, but over the last 4 years, the condition of our roads has actually deteriorated. In addition to roads, we need to talk about the roadway. And I have been a pedestrian safety advocate since 1995, when I advocated for my first sidewalk. At the same time, I have a corporate background, and I know that we cannot state that we have achieved success until we get results. And this really disturbs me, because pedestrian safety seems to be on everyone's mind and everyone's agenda this year. However, if we don't fund the improvements, we're not going to realize anything. And I think we need to improve safety for all roadway users, pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers, using proven engineering standards. And congestion is not a way to improve pedestrian safety, and it decreases air quality. And I'd like to mention that I have been endorsed by the Sierra Club, and that's it.
Well, thank you, Ms. Griswold. Same question to you, Ms. Lieberson. In addition to everything we've been asking so far, what other issue is a priority for you, and how would you address it?
I want to talk about a process, what I perceive as a process concern that has to do with transparency and engagement. And I'm going to go back to the water rate study to illustrate it. As I've been knocking on doors, I don't think anyone was aware of what had been going on and what the study was about. And the comments I'm going to make are from primary data sources. I read the request for proposal, I read the presentation to the study group, I read the presentation to council, and I read the entire 100-page report. And So the way it started, before the study started, there was a big effort to communicate and get people to take an online survey. Media, MLive, social media, Nextdoor, Facebook, radio ads were solicited. 677 people were included. And those people said most of them get their information about their water bills from wastewater or their bill, which they receive quarterly. When focus groups were conducted 6 months later, there was a trivial effort to recruit people. Only it was posted on the city website and very little else. 6 people participated in 2 focus groups. That's not transparency, that's not communication.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberson. Same question to you, Ms. Grand.
Thank you. If there's one thing that I hear again and again from residents when I'm out knocking doors, it's, I love Ann Arbor. I'm so happy with the city. We're really happy here, but the roads. So then it's a great opportunity to talk about the money that we've put into roads. So we've put $4.3 million into roads, but what I'm most excited about is not the money, but it's the way that we're spending the money. And we have what's called a pavement asset management plan, which another way to think of it is mixes of fixes. And it means that we're doing more preventative maintenance, extending the life of the asset. So when we do a major reconstruction, we're then going down a few years later and making sure that we can do some less expensive things to extend that life. We're also looking at different kinds of fixes. So sometimes we're just doing a surface fix. And then when we do a deeper reconstruction, we're really looking at what's underneath the road, because the drainage is what exacerbates the effects of the freeze thaw. So I understand that residents haven't seen the improvements directly in their neighborhoods because we focused first on major streets, but I'm excited as we turn ahead to look to go from major streets into our neighborhood roads. And similarly related to infrastructure, we're also making major improvements to our water treatment plant. We've already done it with sewer and with stormwater as well on the horizon.
Thank you, Ms. Grand. I'm told we have time for one more question. So may I start with you on this last question, Ms. Griswold? Let's go from the detail to the general for a moment for the final question. Could you tell us why you decided to be a candidate for the Ann Arbor City Council?
I have been, as I stated, a pedestrian safety advocate for decades, let's just say. One of the reasons that I decided to run is that we are not accelerating our improvements to pedestrian safety, nor are we using good engineering practices. One example is that we had a 10-year moratorium on street lighting. That was finally lifted in February of 2015. So we were actually building crosswalks in the dark for many years. However, still, this was, again, February 2015, when I brought up, and I'm quoted in the Ann Arbor News as talking about unlit mid-block crosswalks, including one on Packard Road near the US 23 overpass that's still not lit, and one on Fuller Road between Huron High School and Gallup Park. 18 months later, it was still not lit, the one on Fuller Road, and there was a fatal crash and a student was killed. We knew about that. I don't want to just be a critic. I want to be on council accelerating these improvements and getting the budget that's needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griswold. Mr. Westfall, same question to you.
I've always been interested in cities, and I've always been interested in public service. It's why I came to the University of Michigan for my master's in urban planning. It's why I asked to be appointed to a commission right when I graduated from my program, and it's why I've had such a long track record of public service. It had come on the heels of, I think, 8 years on the Planning Commission when I was asked if I'd consider running for city council, and frankly, elected office had never had never occurred to me. But there was a need, and I feel like it's everybody's obligation to chip in when they're asked to step up in some capacity. And you know, it had been a good time, you know, in the Planning Commission, being able to look at things from a best practices point of view and offering opinions and, you know, making statements about, you know, what should be done. But I began to realize that without folks willing to step up and implement improvements, the city can't progress. So I've been proud that Ann Arbor has been honored time after time as a model of sustainability, of putting forward best practices for sustainability, for inclusion, and for a host of other progressive ideas, because we have the resources and we have the talent here to move forward in that way, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. Ms. Grand, same question to you. In addition to all these questions you've been subjected to so far, what other issue is a priority for you, and how would you address it?
Oh, is that?
No.
Oh, that's okay. We've got it. I'll just move forward. So why did I decide to run? So serving on council. It's okay. It's the end of the evening. Serving on council. One of the benefits of it is that you have a front seat to all the good that's done in this community. There's not a day that goes by that I don't hear from a resident or see something on council or work with volunteers on a commission or a committee where people are contributing to our civic life. And that is a real honor and a privilege to get to see that. I came into this with a lot of experience. I spent 6 years on the Park Advisory Commission. I was chair for 3.5. I served on that commission during a recession where we had to make a lot of difficult decisions, and certainly understood what kind of an engaged, passionate community we have before serving on council. My professional training as well, I have a PhD in health services organization and policy, so I've spent a lot of time studying policy, and my day job now in academic advising revolves around listening and collaborative problem solving. Again, getting to hear lots of student stories. I'm really proud of what we've accomplished, but feel as if, you know, thinking long term and understanding that government moves slowly, that we have a lot of work ahead, and look forward to following through with our plans to make this a better community.
Thank you, Ms. Grant, and thank you for the save. Ms. Lieberson, same question to you. What made you decide to be a candidate for the Ann Arbor City Council?
Okay, well, I know I'm supposed to have a 5-word answer, but I'm glad I have a minute and a half. I have always been interested in politics, but I focus much more on the national scene. But when I retired, I had a lot more time, and I started paying attention to local issues. And I must say I was very disappointed to see some of the tribalism and partisanship that we see in Washington surfacing in Ann Arbor. I also felt for a city of very smart people, we don't necessarily make very smart decisions or write very good contracts. I remember reading the most recent YLOT article, and I felt like it was Groundhog Day, and I thought, why can't we figure out how to do this? You know, we've had the opportunities on this property several times, and with my experience in market research, data analysis, and strategic planning, I thought, I could really contribute here. I think I can know how to approach these issues and solve them. And finally, I recently participated in the Ann Arbor Citizens Academy, which was a wonderful experience. And one thing that most impressed me was the water situation. And we went to the water plant, which is a wonderful tour. But I really started thinking a lot more about the Gelman plume and how the city has not taken an active role in pursuing what I think is a real imminent public health danger. And I am also proud that I've received the endorsement of the Sierra Club, and environmental issues, not just talking, but doing, will be a priority of mine.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberson. This brings us now to the closing statements. And Mr. Westfall, you will have the first closing statement.
Thank you, and thank you to all the candidates for running the League and CTN and our committed audience. Every city has challenges, and Ann Arbor is no different. As council members, we spend most of our time fixing problems, as we should. We can't lose focus on traffic management and pedestrian and bike safety. We must stay in the game so we don't lose tens of millions in grants toward better rail infrastructure. We need to leverage all the federal money we can for affordable housing, and we can't afford to gamble any taxpayer dollars on unnecessary lawsuits. But I think it's also important to step back and take stock of what a wonderful community we have. I tell all my friends what an incredible place this is, and we rightly win awards year after year. Companies are opening up shop in Ann Arbor. The university and private sector are bringing jobs here. I'm optimistic about our future. We are a beacon of success in the Midwest and nationally. And this success has played a role in our ability to finally repair our roads more aggressively, to replace our street trees and take care of our parks, to install new pedestrian safety and water infrastructure. The momentum is building, and I'm proud of our progress. If re-elected, I promise to make sure we continue forward thoughtfully and always with an eye toward handing off Ann Arbor to the next generation better than we found it.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall. Ms. Griswold, may we have your closing statement?
Yes. While I'm not the incumbent on City Council, I served as the Ann Arbor Public School trustee from 2001 to 2005. And prior to serving, I was with a group of people that championed a $25 million bond to end high school overcrowding with the construction of Skyline High School. I believe that I have the experience and the skill set to use to accomplish similar achievements on City Council. I have a reputation for being results oriented in terms of problem solving and listening to my constituents. As one neighbor said, if you want something done, just ask Kathy. I want to thank the League not only for holding this forum, but for all of the outreach that you do throughout the year to increase voter turnout.
Thank you, Ms. Griswold. Ms. Lieberson, may we have your closing statement?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for your mission and also for sponsoring this debate. I would also like to thank all the people who are listening and to the many people I've met campaigning door to door. This has really been a lesson of democracy in action. When I knock on a door, people stop what they're doing and take the time to talk and share their ideas, opinions, and concerns. We can talk about the things that really make Ann Arbor great, but what really makes us great is our people. Smart, passionate people with great ideas and valid concerns. It is time to start listening. Residents are eager to discuss issues and understand that life requires compromise, and they expect as much of their representatives. This is what I will bring to council. I ask the people in all the neighborhoods of the 3rd Ward for their vote on August 7th. For more information or to contact me directly, please go to my website, alicelieberson.com, and thanks again.
Thank you, Ms. Lieberson. And Ms. Grand, may we have your closing statement?
Sure. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting us this evening, and to all of my fellow participants and those watching at home and in our audience. Over the past 4 years, I've helped to add millions of dollars and supported long-term data-driven solutions to improve our roads and to protect the safety of our water. We've made significant improvements that will keep our kids safe as they walk and bike to school. We are taking steps to address the critical issue of affordability so that those who work in Ann Arbor can live here, send their kids to school here, and contribute to our unique community. I'm proud of these accomplishments, but understand there's important work ahead. This work will require experienced leadership from people who understand the history and complexity of the issues we face and the need for thoughtful, comprehensive solutions. Over the last 4 years, I've learned so much from the conversations from Ward 3 residents. You've generously shared your concerns, your solutions, and most importantly, your stories. I understand that many of you care deeply, as I do, about the future of our city, our community, and its people. And it's those Ward 3 residents, the people that I serve, who inspired me to run for re-election, and I hope to have your vote again on August 7th.
Thank you, Ms. Grand, and thank you, candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates for participating in tonight's forum, and to CTN for making this program possible. These forums will be rebroadcast on Channel 19 a number of times between now and the election, and are available on demand for streaming on your computer or smartphone. Go to League of Women Voters website, which is lwvannarbor.org, and look for the link to the programs. For additional balanced, nonpartisan information on candidates and ballot issues, go to vote411.org. That's VOTE411.org, and enter your address. There you will find information on the candidates and ballot proposals that will appear on your ballot. Be sure to vote in the primary on August 7th. Good night. Thank you.